In my mind, one man changed the game of baseball. And because of what he did, we now have a brand of baseball called Billy Ball. Billy Ball didn't start where you might think it started. You might think it started with the Oakland A's because that's where he got all the publicity. But it didn't start there. It started in Denver with the Denver Bears in 1968. But on June 5, 1961, my life changed because I was awakened at an ungodly hour by my father, who was working in the baseball business and telling me that, Bobby, wake up. I got a phone call late last night after you were in bed from the commissioner, and he wants to see me in New York today. And I'm going to take you to Yankee Stadium with me, and you're going to get to see your hero, Mickey Mantle. Well, folks, I can remember every detail about this because I was so excited, and I remember my first plane ride. I can remember flying through Chicago and then on to New York. And as we got to New York, I remember the big buildings that were off to the left I could see forever. And then as we banked, I could see the great Statue of Liberty. And of course, the landing was a little rough, which was my first trip, but I was there. I was in New York City, and the next thing I know, we are taking a crazy cab ride and to downtown Manhattan, and we got out at Jack Dempsey's restaurant. Now, Jack Dempsey was the world heavyweight champion of the world for many, many years in the 1920s, a man who had knocked 58 people out with his right hand. And lo and behold, my dad knew Jack Dempsey, and Dempsey had been from Colorado just like us, and Dempsey sat with us and had lunch with us. So here I am sitting with the world heavyweight champion of the world, and I'm shaking a hand that 58 guys had already felt and been knocked out. But we had lunch, and then we hustled on over to the commissioner's office, and at 10 years old, I'm sitting in the baseball commissioner's office and wide-eyed, as you can imagine, just looking at all the baseball artifacts that were in the office. And I remember my dad and the commissioner were talking about, I think, speeding up the game of baseball. Well, folks, we are still talking about speeding up the game of baseball. And that was 60 years ago. But after the meeting, my dad and I hurried on down Park Avenue and got on a subway, and my first subway ever, of course, and it was the number 4. And it took us out to Yankee Stadium. And I got off the platform, and I'll never forget looking at the beautiful Yankee Stadium building. And the house that Ruth built is what it's called, or the cathedral of all sports stadiums. And I just was in awe from that very moment. Well, we went through the turnstiles, and immediately we were ushered up to the owner's box. So here I am with my father sitting with the owner of the New York Yankees and having lunch, or dinner, I should say. And then after dinner, we went down and sat in the manager's box, which was the box right outside of the dugout. And it just so happened to be right where the players would come and get the bats out of the bat rack, and they would be looking right at me. Well, my dad happened to know the manager of the Yankees, and a man named Ralph Houck, and my dad let Houck know somehow that I had a great affection for Mickey Mantle. Well, I remember in the third inning, Mickey Mantle came out to get his bat, and he looked right at me, and he winked. And just one look was all it took, and I was in hog heaven. Now, Mantle would have a bad game that day. He actually struck out once and popped up the second time and didn't look good the third time at bat, and I'm crushed because I want to see Mickey, my hero, get a base hit. But I'm not sure that Mickey's going to get a fourth chance. Well, lo and behold, Mantle was scheduled to bat in the 8th inning, 4th. And I'm just hoping somebody gets a base hit so he can get up. Well, Yogi Berra got a base hit, and up came the Mick. And on a 1-ball and 2-strike count, Mantle crushed a home run over the right center field bleachers, and the Yankees won 4-2. And I don't know how to say this other than it must have been an epiphany, if there's such a thing. But everything just stopped. It all just made sense to me. It was the smell of hot dogs and hamburgers and popcorn and cigar smoke and the people cheering wildly and confetti being thrown everywhere. But it all made sense. And from that point on, I wanted to be in this business somehow, some way. Well, as luck would have it, I did get in the business, and although I started at the bottom, sweeping the ballpark after games, doing every job you can do to ushering to everything. But in 1968, I was running the scoreboard for the Denver Bears, and the scoreboard was located out in left center field, and I had to climb a 150-foot ladder to get to where I would call every ball striking out after the umpire had called them. Well, in 1968, the Denver Bears, were also the AAA farm club of the Minnesota Twins. Now, what that means is that the Twins supplied the Denver franchise, which we owned, and with the players, and we also owned the ballpark. So the Twins gave us the players, so we were a little bit mercy as to what kind of talent you get, but my dad is a very shrewd negotiator and a very good baseball man, and he had been told by Calvin Griffith, the owner of the Twins, that we would have a really good ball club. Well, the Bears lost 22 of the first 29 games they played. So our record is 7 wins and 22 losses, and my dad is on fire. And it wasn't necessarily that they were losing, it was the way they were losing. It just looked like a very undisciplined bunch. They were letting balls go through their legs, they were throwing to the wrong bases, they were doing all the little things that little leaguers do. So he got on a plane and went to Minnesota, and he had an appointment with the owner of the Twins, Calvin Griffith, and not a whole lot of minor league general managers have enough clout to be able to do what my dad was about to do. And what he did was he said, Calvin, if you don't give me some better ball players, at least let's shake this up somehow. We make our living by selling tickets to the baseball games, and people don't come out and see the kind of ball that we're playing. So Calvin was a little bit taken back by that, and he said, okay, Jim, if you're so smart, who do you want to manage the team? To which my father replied, I want your third base coach, Billy Martin. Billy Martin, was Calvin's response. Billy can't manage himself, let alone put him in charge of 25 kids who are 19 years old. He said, this will never work and Billy will never come. So my dad asked for the permission to just at least speak to Martin. And the next thing I know, Billy Martin is in Denver as the manager of the Denver Bears and basically living at our house because he's only going to be there for a couple months. So I had the great fortune of now being around this great guy and watching him manage, but also at night we talk about the games and strategies. We also had a speed bag in the garage to which my brother and I were taught how to box by Billy Martin. Now, a couple words about Billy. Billy probably had more fights than anyone in the history of baseball, both on the diamond and off the diamond. But he really knew how to fight. And unfortunately, he taught my brother and I, and it's probably why my nose is really crooked because Billy accidentally hit me. He said it was an accident. But anyway, I carried the mark of Billy Martin, or I might have been a movie star somewhere. Anyway, Martin's team didn't immediately win like 10 in a row, but they started playing a different brand of baseball, which really was Billy Ball. Guys were hitting and running, they were bunting, they were drag bunting, they were stealing bases, they were doing double steals, they were doing all the little things that you do to win. And all of a sudden, the team went on a tear, and all of a sudden, the town of Denver just went nuts over what is this guy gonna do next? So they were coming out at night to see our ball club. Well, one night up in the scoreboard from my vantage point from left field, I had some binoculars one night, and while I was looking at the catcher, I could see the catcher signs. I said, oh my God, I've got to tell Billy this. Well, after the game that night, I went home and Martin met us at our house, and my dad and he had a few drinks and hit the speed bag a little bit, and I then told Billy that, hey, Billy, from where I sit in the scoreboard, I can see the catcher signs. And he said, oh, Bob, this is great. His eyes were big as saucers, and he said, man, Warren Spahn is managing the Tulsa Oilers, and they're coming into town tomorrow. When you know that they're going to throw a fastball, flip this switch. When you throw it's a curveball, flip this switch. Well, the next 4 games were almost like football scores as our Denver Bear team hit the balls in places in the ballpark that no one had ever hit balls before. And in the 4th game, we're ahead, 4-1, I think. And Spahn finally figures out that somehow Billy Martin's got the signals. Well, it was me that was giving the signals to Billy. And he switches up. So I'm thinking that they're going to throw a curveball to one of our players and they throw a fastball. So my guy's looking for the curve, but he got beamed right in the head. And Billy gave me the cut sign. And so that was the experiment, but we won 4 ball games. So it probably doesn't say a lot about my integrity, but what do they say in baseball, all is fair in war in baseball. So a great trivia question would be, well, let me finish by saying the Bears finished 68-50 with Martin at the helm. And that's like a 760 winning percentage, almost unheard of. And the team stole home 7 times. Now, I don't think the Kansas City Royals in the whole season last year stole home 7 times. But that was where Billy Ball started. It was right here in Denver. And Martin would later go on to manage the Minnesota Twins, the Detroit Tigers, the Texas Rangers, and the Oakland A's, where they branded Billy Ball. And he was also hired and fired 5 times by the Yankees. But great trivia question, where was the only place Billy Martin wasn't fired? Denver. Hi, this is Bob Burris, and today is the first version of our ultimate backstage pass to sports. And if you like what we do, just do us a favor and give us a thumbs up or a subscribe, and we'll be bringing more behind the scenes stories to you.